what do you see the impact of having these dominant players around information, the Google, the Facebook, and I think even Zuckerberg talked about that they're going to be the ones to open up internet access around the world. What's the implication of having sort of these, you talk about sort of information access and how it affects how we do business and how we think. What is about when these massive amounts of information are guided very heavily by one or two or three players? How does that play into that?
It's disappointing to me because a number of years ago, I started writing about cloud computing, and I wrote a book. This was back in 2008 called The Big Switch, which was about it was kind of before people really started using the phrase cloud and cloud computing, but it was about that. In my own feeling was that this would kind of revolutionize information, the way you access and use information technology in companies, in that, companies were kind of at that point locked into the client server mode of information technology. And that meant they were locked into, Oracle software and SAP software, and they were locked into relationships with IBM and Microsoft. And it was kind of, I saw cloud computing as a way that you could kind of break out of those, what were kind of, in the worst cases, kind of straitjackets, because it made it very, very hard to change your software, change your information technology strategy. And so I thought cloud computing, and as everything moves onto the internet, would open up lots of new competition for suppliers of software, suppliers of computing power, storage capacity. And what we've seen, as you said, is that actually we've gone from these kind of big, powerful one set of big, powerful suppliers to this other set of big, powerful suppliers. And I do think, and of course, that what's changed is that this is now affects our individual personal information and data, as well as what goes on within businesses. And so I think, obviously Facebook, Twitter, Google, these have been great innovators in social media, in cloud computing and so forth, Amazon as well. But, there's always the danger when you get such a consolidation in the supply base that eventually it begins to restrain innovation, and kind of the new small players don't really have a chance. And so I fear that we may see something like that begin to play out. So beyond the questions of, the very important questions of what does it mean to have so much personal information in the hands of, a few small centralized companies that are very powerful, there is the long run question of, are we creating this kind of new infrastructure for computing that's so centralized and so dominated by giant corporations that eventually we're going to squelch some of the innovation you want to see, both in business computing and in personal computing.